Well, basically, I think tariffs lately, I guess in the last 6 years that I know about,
Mhm.
they've been using tariffs to bring countries in line to want to take our products and kind of restrict on dumping of their products in here in the U.S. for cheaper prices.
Welcome to Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Roslyn Khan, Larry Haber, Bill Russell, and Mike Rosenblum. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Welcome so much, everybody, to the Third Side Convo, where we take a fresh, balanced approach to the issues that matter. Now, tonight, we're diving into a topic that's as old as the nation itself: tariffs. Now, right now, tariffs are making huge headlines, with the Republicans suggesting that a liberal use of them is needed to protect American industries. On the flip side, Democrats warn that this could raise prices and spark trade wars. But as always, we're here to set aside the partisan noise and talk about the issue itself. We're going to look into the history a little bit of tariffs, from Alexander Hamilton to the Smoot-Hawley Act, and share some fun and bizarre tariff stories. Like taxes on soap and windows and even beards. We're also going to take a closer look at how countries like China and the EU use tariffs on American goods. Most importantly, we're going to ask the big question: can Democrats and Republicans find common ground on tariffs, or are they destined to fight over them forever? So let's get started digging past the politics to find the third side. So welcome to the conversation, everyone. Now, who would like to tackle, I don't know, who said they wanted to tackle a little bit about the history of that? Larry, did you want to throw that out, or is that something Bill was
Yeah,
going to take?
I'll just do a quick
Yeah.
synopsis. Basically, tariffs have
What
been
the hell are
around.
they?
They've been around forever, as long as we've had countries and states. And it's
Okay.
basically saying to somebody, if you want to sell to my people, I'm going to put a tax on you. A tariff is a tax, nothing more.
Okay. It's like a tax at the border, right? So on
Correct.
products going both in and out, right?
Well, it's typically when something is being imported that's
Okay.
called the tariff. That's just the name that's been given to it over the years.
Okay. Bill, what do you know about the history of these daggum things?
Well, looking at it just from a modern take, as a lot of folks have come to perceive tariffs as being a penalty, but they're really not. Just as Larry pointed out, they're nothing more than a tax. We see them commonly used, particularly, for example, in the EU, they have a 10% import tax on anything coming from the States and anywhere else in the world that's outside of the EU, which you pay the 10% tax, and then they charge an additional their 24% in-point sales tax on top. That is tax. They charge a tax on the tax. So they are pretty. They can be pretty invasive, and they really raise the price of American products going into the EU.
Gotcha. Roslyn, what's your understanding about tariffs up until it all of a sudden becoming a big deal?
Well, I just know the age-old thing about the tariffs and the tea and dumping the tea in the tea harbor was just where it all began, and it's just rumbuzzled and grown from there. That's my knowledge of tariffs.
Gotcha. I know it's funny how you hear that thing, but what is it really all about? Mikey, you're new to this thing. What's your first thoughts on tariffs and how they've been used?
Well, basically, I think tariffs lately, I guess in the last 6 years that I know about, they've been using tariffs to bring countries in line to want to take our products and kind of restrict on dumping of their products in here in the U.S. for cheaper prices. And that hurts our bottom line with our companies here in the U.S.
Yeah, I always wondered why, in researching this today, I always wondered why when anybody comes over here, they always go to like Penny's or somewhere and stock up on jeans. Somehow in the EU, jeans are specifically have a tariff to them. That's just amazing. I always wondered why it was. Now I learned that it was tariffs that caused that thing. Larry, I mean, from what I understand, weren't tariffs our prime I guess, source of income for our country until what, the income tax in the 1900s, right?
Right. If you go strictly on how they've been used in the United States, the biggest problem the U.S. had up until 1913 was how to raise revenue. And I know everybody thinks the income tax has been around forever, but it's only been about 100 years. And before that, the size of our government and the tariffs, the dollars that were produced were all that supported government and pretty much balanced budgets. It's hard to imagine that in the 1800s we had, budgets in the hundreds of millions or billions,
Right.
and that was all usually from tariffs on goods that were coming in, and that was the entire government. That's it.
So the government was a little smaller back then, possibly?
Just a little.
Yeah, I mean, I've even heard, some people explain that the Civil War, part of the reason for the Civil War was the tariffs that they were putting on the goods. So it caused the South not be able to sell the agricultural products. Has anybody ever talked about that one or know about that?
Exactly. And there's history of them all the way through. They're claimed to be what caused the Depression. They're claiming to be what will cause another depression or recession. But I'll take the position that I think tariffs need to be done away with by everybody, and we shouldn't be using them as a weapon the way we are now.
Anybody on the right got a response to that?
Well, I would argue that it is an effective weapon and it's a necessary weapon. I would be my approach is the exact opposite of Larry's at this point. I would argue that we need to use tariffs more and income tax less. But that said, tariffs are an effective weapon, and particularly when we have countries, and China's the big offender right now, everything from dumping of steel to high-tech products to microchips. They've been dumping products into the United States that are heavily subsidized, that undercut American industries and cut out American competition and hurt American manufacturers. Tariffs are one way of implementing that. And of course, we most recently heard where tariffs were used to force the Colombians to take the deportees were sitting back to Colombia. The threat of tariffs was very effective in getting the Colombian president to accept his own citizens back that were being deported from the United States.
Okay,
Be
Roslyn.
careful what you wish for.
I understood. It's a weapon, but it's one that has to be used carefully and judiciously. And sometimes the threat of its use is better than the actual use.
Okay.
I would rather see the tariffs go away everywhere, because all they do is distort trade and make it more difficult for poorer people to afford whatever goods are coming in that are subject to the tariffs. So those are the people getting hurt. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, Roslyn.
Well,
What? Yeah, Roslyn. What? I mean, your understanding of tariffs might be as good as mine till I came in to start studying this. Is it something that we almost have to have them because others have them, or what is it? What do you see with tariffs?
Well, I always see when I don't understand, I go look at my phone and see what my phone has to say to me. And it says, going back in time, tariffs are used imposed by governments to raise revenue to protect their domestic products. They don't want the other side getting advantage of them. And so they say, hey, if they're going to cost this much, then we want it to be this much because we want to save our product line. They're often unwanted side that expect high consumer products. So as my good buddy Larry had gone ahead and said, we see with what's happening with the cell phone industry and with the lack of those particular product types, there was a huge run that the Chinese had all those products and we didn't have them. And so we wanted to charge them up the yin yang, but we couldn't do anything else because no one else had them. And so we were getting, pulled over the bucket because that's something we didn't have, and we couldn't make them. And so we were forced to pay them. And we've used it time and time again to go against other countries to say, hey, you haven't been nice to us, so we're going to go ahead and throw a tariff on you of going ahead and importing your goods and services. We've seen that in, the Middle East
Right.
and the Russian crisis, and, we
Sure.
could go on and on with things
Yeah.
that we've seen about imposing tariffs.
Mike, what's your basic understanding about how they best should be used, or should they be used?
Well, I think they should be used to restrict other countries like Mexico, Canada, especially China, to give us an even playing field to be able to sell our products to them, because a lot of countries don't use a lot of our products, and they keep dumping their products in, and we can't survive and make a decent wage if we can't produce our products.
So are you saying it's kind of unfair the way it's being done, or what?
Oh, of course, because the wages that they charge are a lot lower than what we're doing, and they mass produce more, and they take advantage of us.
Yeah, I was listening. Jeff Barrett was telling me a story about over there. You can, buy a cell phone for $3, because that's their, they don't have much more cost in it than that. That's amazing. But people don't even think about it because we don't see the tariffs, do we? Does anybody notice when a tariff hits or what? I mean, I know that Joe Boy has said that we're going to have major, computers would go up in price if we do these tariffs, right? That computers will have to go, or technology will. Is that what everyone understands? Who wants to jump?
Right. No, it could well occur, and it will probably drive prices of some items up. And the problem is that sometimes, like say, with so many countries, when they dump their products into the United States economy because we don't have the import taxes, we don't have the tariffs in place. I'm all in favor of fair trade, and fair trade when it occurs, and fair and free trade when it occurs, is the best promoter of economic wealth on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the trade agreement. However, when one side is intentionally cheating the other side, is not engaged in fair trade, or is putting unfair government subsidies and control of their products to intentionally undercut the American economy, then tariffs do become a necessary tool to use. And yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Well, how do we get rid of them then? I mean, Larry, you're saying you don't want tariffs, right?
Well,
how can we control the other? Yeah.
Here's a distinctive difference. In the Colombia case, they're being used as a weapon, pure and simple. You either do what I want or else. That is a very, very new use of tariffs. And as a weapon, as that escalates, because it is very, very effective, we'll get the same from the other side. We're not going to eliminate tariffs from the other side. We're just going to start another war on tariffs. And whether or not that really started the Great Depression, we're doing exactly what happened in the 1920s right now. Wow. And I hope that that's not where it leads, but you never know.
Yeah. Well, I would argue it's a little more of what we're doing now or that the tariffs that were used in the 30s were actually used, had the effect of prolonging the Great Depression. But that said, yeah, it's a dangerous weapon, and I've got to concede that. It's not the cure-all, and it's not the magic wand that immediately protects jobs. Sometimes it does undercut them. So it is a dangerous weapon. It has to be used very, very carefully. But unfortunately, it's a weapon that's out there, and everybody's using them, and everybody else is using them in the matter of course, and we have to keep ours in place.
All right. Well, we're going to have to take our break right now. We're going to take our first break, and so thank you so far. So what we got to do, subscribe on Facebook. Please go to thirdsideconvo.com, subscribe there, like us and everything else, and we will be right back after a word from our wonderful sponsors.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad. My computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Tibia Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is tariffs.com.
All right, we've kind of talked about almost the theory of a tariff. Yeah, it raises this and raises that, but let's go into China specifically, because isn't the reason that we're having to, we're imposing a tariff on China, right? That's the way it's working, isn't it? Isn't that the direction? Because they're imposing tariffs on U.S. goods. Isn't it?
Well, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not quite that way, Bob.
Okay, good.
China, we have tariffs on Chinese goods because China subsidizes the hell out of their production and the people, and we have uneven economies in terms of what people get paid. It's easy to say, okay, we'll take the Chinese good for $1 when it's $2 in the US because it's $1 less. And for China's purposes, that extra dollar is either because they get paid less or because they're getting subsidized by the government. So there's a very real reason to have tariffs to equalize trade, particularly with a predator like China. What I have a problem with just a little bit, because I don't know how far this is going to go, is just what happened with Colombia is the perfect example. Take the deportees or else we put a tariff. The tariff had nothing to do with anything business related. It was being used as a weapon. And that's where I have a big problem with where we're going with this right now.
Yeah. Well, in terms of it being used as a weapon and going back to the Chinese example, China has habitually not honored intellectual property rights. They've not honored the patents. Anything we've sent over there in terms of intellectual know-how on how to manufacture stuff has been stolen, and the copyrights thrown out the window, and then mass manufactured with slave labor and then dumped back into our market. So they're very useful there. In terms of some of these countries that have been sending all their criminals into our country, that's a direct tax on us and the American taxpayer. So in this sense, you could link it to an economic argument and forcing them to take their detainees back or face massive tariffs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you're saying that it's been used successfully as a threat and maybe used in the future as a threat. Larry, you don't want to see any tariffs at all, but there is a need for them sometimes, right? With the massive trade imbalance.
That's correct. But you can do, for example, with China, you can restrict imports, period. You don't have to raise the prices for everybody else. The only problem I have with tariffs is in the abstract, they just raise prices for people that can least afford them. Now, if it actually came to pass that Trump could figure out how to do tariffs and no income tax,
hold on.
And if we actually can get no, I know, I'm gone. Throw me out.
Well, let's talk to Roslyn. Roslyn, what have you learned from your phone in the past 10 minutes?
Well, from my phone in the last 10 minutes, I've learned.
Hey, I know your phone's got a lot of power there, Roslyn. We realize that. I mean, everybody goes to their phone, right? Hopefully somebody's watching this show and, hitting it on tariffs to figure out what the hell they are.
Well, first of all, I went and I looked at the eggs because the eggs are astronomical because of the bird flu and so on and so forth. So it gave me some introduction into what's happening of why eggs are now $7-8 a dozen here in California. I don't know if they're facing the same across the rest of the United States, but there was some tariffs that were put on different countries for them not to send us those infected birds, because that's just further going ahead and hurting our economy.
Right.
In the back of my mind, I keep on coming back to this thing, and I think there must be some connection to tariffs about why the people of Chinese are dumping this cheap throwaway clothes. There's a whole bunch of clothes that's being dumped in the United States that's going against the high cost of American, things. And I've been to people who've got closets and closets and closets of stuff, and they just go into dumps. People are throwing away stuff that they've never gone ahead and used, and that's because I believe there's a connection between the tariffs that are out there of how they're able to get this stuff in, and no one cares because it costs less to make it there. We can't make it for that because it costs more. And that's how the story goes.
Mike, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of, agree with her. You got companies, where we got Amazon here in the U.S., and you got companies like Temu that are all Chinese-based products.
Yeah.
And you could basically get them almost for nothing. They're even giving them away most of the time.
Okay. Well, so then, okay, so if we're giving away, so everybody's still saying, so we need the tariffs? I'm still saying, it seems like tariffs are a part of life. And everybody is now taking this quote, we're going to do tariffs and all these prices are going to go up, but there are other needs and uses for them.
Well, I'll go back to, without mentioning names this time, if we can use tariffs to get rid of income tax, I would be very happy to see tariffs used for that purpose. But if tariffs are just going to keep funding more deficits on top of the income tax ridiculousness we have now, then something's got to give.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, Roslyn, so, you know, here we have you come on this thing, and we kind of, I don't know if we've solved anything on tariffs yet. In other words, they are a part. In other words, isn't it that most other countries, they all have tariffs, right? From what you can
Pretty
see,
much.
or what did the phone tell you? Did the phone tell you that pretty much all of the countries have tariffs?
Everybody has a tariff, and they're used by one way or another to help them get money, make money from the other people that are out there. If you have something that the other people need, then you want to go ahead and charge it so you can get your money's worth. And I think my buddy here on my side hit it across the head. If you can make it for cheaper, and you can get it in, you know, there's got to be something to help us out. And that's the part that we keep coming back to. We got to protect the American interest and what we make here in America. And why do we just open arms to what you have, but where's the same open arms to what we have getting into your country?
Excellent. I agree with you. That's what I see on this whole thing. But, you know, that's not necessarily the discourse going on right now. The partisan divide, of course, has us just pointing fingers all the time, which is why we do this show. Mike, have you learned anything so far? Say yes,
I
whether you did or
basically
not.
learned that we need to use tariffs in the correct way, where it's not burdensome on everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think some of the resistance on the left to this is, you know, as currently being to promote the External Revenue Service, as our current president has put it, and in collecting these tariffs,
We might need to
a
beat
lot
them
of
on that. That was pretty direct.
Yeah, a lot
that
of
was
the
pretty
yeah.
direct, Bill. Stop that. Just say the Republicans are Democrats. That's what we're trying to do here. Is we're trying to.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Well, with the Republicans and Democrats, as Republicans are pushing now the External Revenue Service as opposed to the Internal Revenue Service, I think a lot of the resistance from the left is coming from that very point, because if this is successful, if they're able to move away from direct taxes on the people in terms of income tax, that's why the left is going to resist this, because that is the means by which they exercise power over groups within the United States. That is the means by which they use to promote class warfare. That is the means by which they, both sides of the aisle, maintain their advantages and their leverage over certain groups of
I appreciate that both sides
people.
of the aisle thing here. It's, you know what? I mean, if Joe Boy had it right, we'd get in more fights and things. So we're not doing a good job of getting in a fight today, but oh well. You know, we're learning something. That's all we can do. So please subscribe on thirdsideconvo.com and on Facebook and like us there. And we'll be right back after our final word from our sponsors.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
So, Larry, the way we've been talking about this show, or at the show, I don't think we've necessarily all decided that tariffs are going to go away. Probably not. But, let's just look at the China situation. I mean, in the China situation, you literally have a situation where they're paying wages of $2 a day and we're having to pay $15 an hour. Aren't tariffs necessary to balance that type of thing? Larry?
Well, again, in that case, I agree with you. And that's what we've used them for. It's the latest example of how we're going to use them, the weaponization of them, that I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with having using the might of the United States. That part of it is okay. We are the biggest. We do support the rest of the world. We are the biggest by far in terms of defense. So let somebody else help us out with some of the other things that are, they're sending into our market that are below anything we could possibly produce. But I just sense that this is going to get a little bit worse week by week until it really becomes a big problem. And then we're not going to have any way to pull it back at that point.
Got it. So your thing is really depending on how it's used. Mike, that's
Correct.
kind of what you said a minute ago, isn't it?
Yeah. Basically, I know the number one thing that I would use tariffs is on a restriction based type thing where, like for instance with China, with them importing fentanyl through Mexico. We need to do something to try to prevent that. So I think tariffs in that respect is a good thing.
So we're going to put the tariffs on the fentanyl if we can catch it first, or what?
Well, if you charge them tariffs, enough tariffs on some of the goods that they keep dumping into the U.S., it'll, maybe stop them from shipping the fentanyl over.
So possibly, again, as a big stick, you're saying. As a big stick.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Roslyn, how do you see them used in the future?
Well, I'm going to go back to my phone and what my phone says.
Cool.
My phone says of how they can be used effectively. They can help new industries grow by shielding them from foreign competition. So say that you've got a new idea that you want to help out on something that's never been seen before. It's a way to get that new idea out there and protect it and have it used as its best. They are a source of government income. But what they really go ahead and they stand up against how other countries make their things artificially cheaper. And if they make them artificially cheaper, then we've got to tariff them so that our country isn't getting taken advantage of. They can also be used as a bargaining tip to negotiate favorable terms with other countries.
Yeah,
and I'd like to see more examples of how that helps us in this world. And just going to the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, and we look at the translation of how many Israelis are returned for how many Palestinians. You get four Israelis for 500 Palestinians. I mean, I don't understand where the ratio is there.
Yeah, I think it was like 30-1 or 40-1. I'm going, boy, that they're saying that, I don't know. Never mind. I won't comment on that one. Different show. Bill, your turn.
Well, not all the solutions have to come from the government. I'm thinking back to the VCR wars of back in the 90s. There was an American businessman went to Japan in the 90s, and he noticed that the Sony VCR was about twice the price of what it costs in the United States, and that Kenwood was having a problem selling their VCRs because of Japanese tariffs. But he noticed that the Japanese were dumping VCRs into America. So he went to the nearest port in America when he got back to the States, bought several container loads of Sony VCRs and re-imported them to Japan and sold them at the discounted price to the Japanese because Japanese would not put tariffs on their own exports. So there are some creative thinking on the part of business people and swimming in this sea. Of course, there's risk involved in that, but that was one example of where somebody got around tariffs and was able to capitalize on the tariffs to his advantage.
So tariffs are it sounds like it's normal relations between countries as if every country was a person and everybody's negotiating prices and terms and all this other stuff. Tariffs,
Exactly.
they've really always been a mystery to me, but I guess y'all have helped me understand it a little more, and that's what I appreciate. Because, again, on this show, we don't always get to some bitter division here, and we certainly, having Larry on the left probably helped to not have a bitter division because he always makes so much sense. And then having Roslyn on as now of our voice of the phone, I think is just wonderful. And Mikey, you were great. I mean, you'll get more relaxed every time you come on. Bill is lightened up so much. But, this Third Side Convo is all about just people talking about a particular issue without mentioning the politicians. We can understand these things ourselves. It's our duty as a citizen to be able to understand, talk politics. And the best way to do it is using Uber Discourse, not talking about the politicians. So please subscribe, thirdsideconvo.com, and we would love to see you again on another version of the Third Side Convo. We'll see you again. Thank you very much.